What's up? What's up? What's up, family? It is Caden here with Urban Finance, also with Black Books Animated. I am excited about this conversation on today. We're going to be talking about Black poverty and the Black family structure. How this conversation came about is someone posted on one of my videos that was about why is the Black community so poor, that one of the reasons they believe that the Black community was so poor is that 70% of Black households had single parents. And so, I could have given my thoughts on the matter, but I really, really wanted to get a group of people together who had different perspectives on this issue to share their thoughts. And so that is the conversation that we will have on today. If you're joining us today, please say what's up in the comment section. I see a few people already saying hi in the comment section. So thank you guys. Say what's up. And I am going to let the various, I'll call them panelists for our conversation today, introduce themselves. And so we will start with Verness.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Thank you all for joining in. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Verns Jump Closet, and I am a content creator on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You guys can follow me. Just go to my YouTube page. All my information is there. I also have two businesses where I sell t-shirts through Spreadshirt and I sell wine through One Hope. So if you guys are interested, go on over there and get you some wine, get you a t-shirt, a hoodie, an apron, whatever you want. And also, I don't only just do motivation and inspiration on my channel. I also talk about YouTube tips, and we give out finance information on how to buy a home, a car, the right way so you don't get scammed. So check me out over there. Thank you.
Come on, Verns. Yes, make sure you go check out her page after this live stream. And so, Tamika, I'll let you introduce yourself now.
There we go. Hey, my name is Tamika. I am a movement artist, plant enthusiast. I'm a She Thinks brand ambassador, mom, wife, and really just here to join in the conversation from a parent perspective.
Awesome. And we have also Michael with us, and he is, I'll let him talk about it, but it is after one where he's at. So I thank him for joining us. He is not on camera, but Michael, can you introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Dorch. I am, of all things, a technology enthusiast. I'm an IT engineer by training. Also, very much so interested in finance. Father of two. Uh, yeah, I'm very interested in just Black empowerment, the Black community in general. And I'd like to think a bit of a tech perspective to that as well. So, very pleased to be here, and I look forward to a very interesting discussion.
And so, the first question before we get into a real dialogue about this particular topic that I wanted to ask you guys, because I'm someone that believes that we all have slight biases in life. And so, I wanted to ask you, are you a product of a single or dual parent household?
I was a dual parent. I actually was adopted at birth. So I was adopted, and it was a mom and dad. And that's all I knew growing up. That's how I thought all people were. I mean, you don't know any different until you grow up and have your own family. So, no, I was in a two-parent family home.
Tamika, how about you?
I've experienced both. I started out as a dual parent home and then became a single parent home within my youth.
That's certainly an interesting perspective right there. And Michael, how about you?
I came from a dual family, a dual parent household. My parents are still together. They've been married for almost 40 years. So,
Amen to that. Amen to that. And for me, I come from a single parent household. My mother is a single mother, raised three boys on her own, did a fabulous job. Her birthday was December 1st. So happy birthday again, mommy. I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So now
Happy
that we
birthday,
got,
Queen.
amen. Amen. now that we got that out of the way, so the questions for today, and this will just start the dialogue. If you're joining us live, just let us know if you have any questions for the panelists at all. But the questions for today is, do you believe that the fact that 70% of African American households have single parents is a major cause of, I guess, poverty in the Black community? What are your thoughts out there?
So I mean, I don't know the statistics other than you presenting it to us. It wasn't something that I was already aware of. I could see where it'd be a factor for a single parent household trying to make ends meet. But I don't know if, I mean, I definitely don't think it's the only reason, right? I think it has a lot to do with knowledge, education, and really how our money could be utilized to really make more money, essentially, as opposed to always looking at the dollar as a means to an end. So yeah, I hear it. I hear statistics, but I feel like there's more to it.
I'm not so sure if that 70% is an accurate number. That's kind of high to me.
Yeah, I looked at the statistics yesterday from the BLS, and it said 67%. So I'm sure the person rounded up a little, but it is a high number.
That's a high number. That's a high number.
Honestly, for me, anything above any percent, 0% is too high. So when I think about what it means, though, is that the destruction of the Black family? Personally, I think we focus too much on single parent households versus dual parent households, and not enough on the community as a whole. When people ask me if my success is because of my parents, I would say yes, but also I don't want to undermine, and I don't want to make it seem as though all the other people in my life weren't, in some cases, equally as responsible, right? I grew up with 4 grandparents. I grew up with my great-grandparents. And in one case, I grew up with my great-great-grandmother. And so that village around me enabled me to have access to resources that people who are from maybe just traditional dual parent households wouldn't have had access to, right? My parents were able to spend the time working to put us, I have 3 brothers, to put us in a better educational situation than someone might have otherwise if they didn't have grandparents and cousins and siblings and all of those extra community actors to enable us to move forward.
Michael, you make a really good point there. And so sometimes we may focus too much on the single or dual parent household. But at the same time, what I also hear is that I had even more than just 2 parents. I had the grandparents there. I had, great grandparents there. I had a community around me. And many people growing up in broken households don't even have 2 parents, let us alone a grandparent and a great grandparent and a whole family to be there with us. And so I hear what you're saying and agree with you. Community, even in absence of that single or dual parent, can make or break a family. But it almost sounds like the more you have, the better off you will be. And I guess that kind of still makes the point of that, people are better off the more parents they have, or if that's a major factor. And so I guess I'll let you guys chew on what both Michael said and where I feel like, even though I think he's saying that, don't focus too much on just a dual parent, but it's kind of sounded more is better. And on top of that, the fact that the Black family structure in general is so broken is still being a leading cause or a major part of it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, including yours.
I used to feel cheated sometimes because I had 2 parents, because sometimes my friends that were single parents, to me, seemed they always had more. Like they got more, like growing up, like 14, 15, trying to get a job. I never was able to get a job as a teenager because they were always given to the people who only had one income first all the time. that aspect I felt cheated because they were like, oh, you have two parents. These they don't have, so they get the jobs first. I didn't have a real job until I got like 18 years old. Yeah, because I was never eligible. So that part I feel, because my friends had jobs and I couldn't get a job.
That's very interesting.
Question. Can I fire a question to that? Do you feel like you needed a job at that age?
Not needed, I wanted. Because all my friends were working at McDonald's, but I couldn't, or wherever they were working in, I couldn't do it.
And there's a good chance my mom is watching this, so I'll watch what I say. But I would say to both Michael Fire question and Vern's point about wanting a job and needing a job. I remember in 2008, I believe, 2007, 2008, we had that big market crash, the subprime mortgage crash, and my mom lost her job. My two brothers at the time weren't working, and I was going to school full time in college and working at the same time. I would say my mom have good kids because at that time, my mom losing her job, whatever I made sure to put it towards the home. And so, but the truth of the matter is, if we had maybe two incomes in the household, and not necessarily children incomes, and we make do. And that's the thing about the Black community. We make do and think that that's the way it should be. But, should it really be that way? And I'm sensitive to, the fact that my mom is probably watching this. But, children should not have to work,
Right.
And choosing to work is one thing, but having to work is another thing. But I'll digress before I get in trouble. I'm going to see her on Saturday too. So
I'll also add that, having dual parents doesn't necessarily mean that you have a wholesome family dynamic or upbringing. That's a huge factor there as well. Two parents doesn't necessarily mean two incomes either. Or two incomes that are doing enough to, both take care of your family as well as invest and find other ways to grow financially.
Yes.
So for me, I'm first generation American. So that's another factor. You have Caribbean parents, what their perspective of the American dream is. I feel like it's quite different from those who are like born and raised here. What they think you can do career-wise and making money and investing money, like their mindset on it is very different. And then their focus. Like, for instance, my mom, who is Guyanese, one of her big focuses when she first got here was then also helping people whom she left behind. So sending money back to Guyana, sending barrels back to, if anyone's Caribbean, you know about the barrels. So it's more than just, taking care of your family that's here. It's also taking care of your family that's back home because they don't have, what's considered to be the opportunities that you have here. So it's just like, you just don't end up talking about money in the way that I think a lot of, I know it's not an addressed topic in the Black family dynamic in general, but I feel like for me as first generation American, like the talk about money was purely just like having a job, life insurance, 401k, like just securing that job long enough to help those things, without looking beyond that. So like currently I am in a Trade Your 9-to-5 stock program, and that would have been the furthest thing from my mind pre-COVID. It was something that I kind of fell into having getting laid off via COVID, and it was just like this topic that I was completely unfamiliar with, like, and it's scary that there's this way to invest and make money that is never discussed, has never been brought to the table as an option, and it seems so foreign. So me doing it, I feel like it's more than just me learning for me. I'm literally learning for my children, for future generations to come. Like I'm starting a whole new conversation in our house, and that has been interesting. That has been very interesting.
I guess any thoughts on what Tamika said?
You know, it's interesting that you point out investing as a whole. And I think to speak to your earlier statistics, Caden, I think a big part of why that poverty exists is because we don't necessarily have um, in our communities a way to, or a good vehicle to invest, or the means in many cases to invest in a way that creates that kind of generational wealth. You know, when we talk about pathways to wealth, we talk about home ownership. Well, it's very challenging to own a home if you don't have excess money. If you don't have,
Mm,
if you reach the end of the month and you're living paycheck to paycheck,
mm,
it's very hard to have the kind of money that would end with a down payment on a home. So you'd
Hmm.
never, you find yourself in your 40s, your 50s, still renting and not creating that wealth that would then be passed on and then used by your children to then invest in their homes. And so because that link is missing, it's much harder for the subsequent generations to take that additional step.
Hmm.
awesome,
I,
awesome.
I think it's a lot with maybe not all of us, some of us not learning this in school, not learning
Mhm,
this with our parents, not learning about saving and investing or putting away, for rainy day or whatever you want to call it. But back in the day, and I'm talking about maybe the 1930s, 1940s, for Black families, what they would do is they would take, a farm or something, and then they would build it up. And this is how some of us got a lot of land, like in South Carolina,
mm,
North Carolina, and Georgia. So not all of us came up with money. Some only made 10,000 for the year, but they were
mhm.
able to save. You can save money today on a janitor's salary, and I'm just saying, if they're
Yep.
making $12,000, I've known people who have saved. So I think it has to do with also learning about saving and not spending every penny you have, or not spending it on the most expensive car or the most expensive piece of jewelry, or and I say that because I did a video on my second
Mm,
YouTube channel about a guy, Black guy,
mm.
who was at the gas station. He won the lottery for like $30,000. He brought a $20,000 chain, and the
Seen
guy
that,
dropped.
and
And I'm
somebody
like, are you
robbed me.
kidding me? Like, nobody taught him to take some of that money and invest it.
No, it's
Break that
absolutely
down like that.
crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I want to touch on some of the points that everyone make, but I also do want to take some time to thank all of our listeners, everyone that's joining us, everyone that's commented in the comment section.
Mhm.
Thank you guys. Go ahead and smash that button. You know, it helps out for the YouTube algorithm. And if you guys want to support the channel, hit the thanks button, support with a super sticker or likes. Do want to highlight some of the comments in the comment section. I know you can see it on the screen. Purpose Driven Life says it takes a village to raise a child. Sharon said it is a major factor when my parents divorced. That's when things change in our house. And so, you know, that's one way people can visibly see that shift between two parents and one parent's household is when a divorce happens. And what are things looking like now that only one parent has to carry the full baggage? J. Lowe says inheritance wealth transfer system have the most degrees in 2020. The problem is we have no inheritance. Mm.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's true right there, you know. And I think that goes to Tamika's point a lot, where you know I'm from the Caribbean. For myself, I was born in Trinidad, and you
All
know,
right.
and not to put anybody out there, but up to this week, I sent money home for my family for the kids to buy tugs for because they play soccer and stuff like that. But you know, whereas oftentimes families who have wealth are able to pass it on to the next generation. Those that are relatively or not even that are somewhat successful in a lot of Black communities have to, you know, transfer that wealth to those who may not be as successful, or help the next person up, which is a good thing. But it also disperses our wealth in ways that doesn't allow it to accumulate, I would say. So Thunder says, yes, the family is broken, and for generation, a lot of us haven't seen what a fully functional nuclear family is, and some of us don't know our role in a family. And yes, I said role is not a bad word. Thunder trying to get people in trouble. And so I'll ask this question. We talked about the knowledge aspect of things, and we talked about the broken family structure. Do you believe what's more important for Black success or Black prosperity, or to build wealth in the Black community? Do you believe that, okay, if we had the knowledge, we will be more wealthy? That's a more major factor? Or do you believe if we had good family structures, if that will lead us to building wealth? What do you believe is most important, the knowledge or the family structure? What do you believe should come first, the knowledge or the family structure? What are your thoughts there?
I'll let Tamika go, and then I'll go after.
I'm driven more to knowledge, because family structure can change at any time. Things can happen at any point in time within your family, losing members of your family. So I feel like knowledge is there and it's untouched. No matter what happens, you have something to build back up from. Once you have that knowledge, you can get everything stripped away from you and still have that knowledge and figure out how to, gain it back. So yeah, that's where I'm leading more to. Also based off my own personal family experiences, I lean more towards knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think it's both, because knowledge is power, and I don't care, for us brown and Black people, I believe knowledge is power. And sometimes we don't know how to get that knowledge because we don't have anyone to pass it down to us. We don't have anyone to pass the strength down to us. And so if we don't have that in our own family structure, and no one taught us or guide us or anything like that, if we don't have the determination to want to have a house, and I talk about this on my channel, and I said knowledge is power. Just because you grew up in the projects and every man in your family went to jail or got shot, or every woman was on a stripper pole, that does not mean you have to do that. You have to take accountability and break that generational curse and that chain, in my opinion.
So I'm going to, even though I am an education super fan, I'm going to take a slightly different tack and say that for me, at least the way I see it, family comes first. And I say that because family provides security, family provides safety, family provides the structure that you need for educational systems to work. It provides a baseline for a child to grow up into someone who really treats learning as something valuable, that treats credit as something valuable. Without that safety, that security, that structure, it's extremely difficult for a child to, how would you ever learn a financial lesson if you felt like you literally couldn't go home and eat? How could you ever feel like you could share emotionally, empathetically with your parents if they were always either physically or emotionally unavailable? So I do think having a strong family structure, again, extended family structure, but a family structure really enables education as a sort of a byproduct, if you will.
It's interesting. Both of those, they're both important, but they can also bump heads so quickly and easily, right? Because what do you say to the person who doesn't have a family? And then how do they know? Or if you have a family, but that's not an important topic of conversation, how do you know to go and obtain that knowledge? So it's just like this constant, two things that are bumping up against each other that, is the reason why we're here. Is the reason why we're having this conversation to begin with, to be honest. It's just, It's sad.
Sure.
Can
I
I
mean,
add one more point to that?
go ahead.
Also, for Black men, and definitely for us Black women, the racial wealth gap, the racial gap when we're going to a job and we're trying to get paid. I'm sorry, we don't get paid our worth, in my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
a person of a different skin color can go in with you and maybe making more. And that's another reason why we may not be able to get ahead, because we are not secure in our finances. You know, if we're, I'm just saying, if you're only making $10, but your partner who's sitting right next to you is a different color is making 18, that's a big gap. So how you expect this person to get a house?
Absolutely. And I think if you go back historically and look at some of the systems that have been put in place to enable white families and other communities that have not been in place for Black communities, communities of color. And I mean, if you go back to the GI Bill, if you go back to just the way that these programs were socially constructed, they are absolutely were constructed in a way that prevented access to communities of by communities of color to those programs. I am in no way saying, I mean, I come from one of these super fun underprivileged communities as well. I grew up in East St. Louis. It's, you know, disadvantaged for sure. And to your point, I like to tell the story that when I grew up, my dad didn't know how to tie a tie, which is very unusual for a church-going family like mine. But he had never grown. I mean, he grew up in a family that was a bit dysfunctional, and he'd never learned. And so part of my education growing up was literally one day when I was 12, going out and finding a man that could show me how to tie a tie. And I was fortunate. I had, again, that community around me where I had someone I could go to and say, hey, my dad doesn't know how to tie a tie. Do you know how? And, you know, somewhere in my circle, I managed to find someone and I learned how to tie a tie. But that's what I mean. Having those resources available to you is just as important, or in some cases more important, than having that tight sort of nuclear family structure.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point as well. And you know, just to give my 2 cents on the issue, and as a like I mentioned, I grew up in a single parent household, and my brothers are all doing well. My dad, who did not raise me, also raised 4 boys, and they're doing really well in life. And so I think, you know, when we often have this conversation, sometimes people point to like there are people that do well that come out of single parents' homes, and that is true. We can all point to people that do well coming out of single parents' home. But when we're talking about these things, we're also thinking of it statistically. So from the larger Black population itself, you know, and so, you know, out of all the Black people out there statistically, what is the impact on single and dual parent household on a child? And I'll say, as someone who's raising a child right now in a dual parent household, things are just different, even in the amount of time you're able to allocate towards your child for educational purposes. You know, when my mom came home from work after working 2 different jobs, she really didn't have the strength and energy after also coming home to cook for her children to really always sit down with us and do anything like our work. We had to take care of that ourselves. And if we didn't take care of that ourselves, it probably was not done. Even with as young as our son is now, you know, if my wife is cooking, then I'm, you know, taking care of the baby. I'm probably teaching him. If I'm cleaning, my wife is probably taking care of the baby and teaching him. And so even from the time that you're able to allocate your child, it makes a huge difference. When I say time to educate, that can be financial or any type of other way. It just is seeing the difference just makes me feel like, you know, it makes a huge difference. You really don't know what you miss, you know, in life when you're growing up. You know, you think that's how things should be, that's how things is, and you do well. But to see the difference, you really understand that how much advantages someone, and this is how I feel, that have a 2-parent household may have over someone with a 1-parent household. And I will go even as far as to say, even sometimes when it's not even as a loving household, because like Tamika mentioned, you know, not everyone in a two-parent household is in a healthy household. To be honest, my household, I would say, was a very healthy and loving place. But I know people who potentially in two-parent household that may not be healthy and loving.
Hmm.
But I do think it may be helpful from an economic standpoint, regardless. What are your thoughts? And we do have this question from Pamela.
I'm gonna let Tamika. I'm gonna let her take it, and then I'm gonna answer.
Sorry,
Are you So, what are
are
your
you referring
thoughts
to?
about the broader system, single parent? And I'm just curious because I popped her question up there. Single parent white households still hold more wealth than the two parent black household. And I guess she's making a point. Um, and I guess this is where we all often get which is the biggest factors, right? Because there are a lot of factors. Which is the biggest factors? And just because we're having a conversation about black family structure, I like to compare it to this. So, do you guys think wage discrimination, tax inequality, appraisal discrimination, do you believe those play bigger factors than the black family structures from a black wealth perspective?
I mean, 1,000%. I don't think anyone who would disagree with that statement has any grasp on reality. I mean,
Mm,
you can't look at statistics. You can't look at any factual statements around mortgage lending, around hiring practices, around everything from redlining to gentrification in communities to, I mean, you can pick school to prison pipelines, so many things really tie into this that honestly, I don't even think there's really a counter argument to make. All of these things absolutely impact our communities in a way that negatively impacts wealth and prosperity and our ability to both buy, invest, and raise families in our communities.
Definitely adds to it. Definitely. Because I was a widow at a young age. Like I said, I grew up with two parents, so all I knew
mhm,
was that. So when I got married, it was just the next step. Okay,
mhm,
mommy and dad did it. That's what I'm gonna do. But then when my husband died, it was a whole new ball game for me. So now I'm quote unquote considered a single parent, right? Which I'm
mhm,
still not thinking that in my head. But I'll
mhm,
tell you this: I never was offered grief counseling. There was never a nurse or a doctor came to me and said, "I'm sorry, your husband died, ma'am." There was nobody there that said, "Let me help you with your kids to give you free daycare." Now, this is just my perspective. If I was white, in my opinion, I think I would have had all that at my foot. I do
mhm,
believe that. So I had to
mhm,
pull myself up by my bootstraps, tap myself in the back, and be like, "Girl, you better do, if your husband was here, he would be proud of you to raise these kids like you're supposed to." And that's what I did. But I had the determination and the willpower to do that. Not all of us do, and I understand that. But
mhm,
again, that could have came from my family upbringing. So, but if you don't have those resources, yeah, you're doomed.
mhm,
Yeah, and I'll be honest, when you go and look at, even if we take one of those elements, let's look at the workforce, right? So I work in technology. I've worked for a lot of major companies, right? So I've worked at Google, I've worked at Adobe, I've worked for Harvard, and one of the overriding facts that is unquestionable in all of those places is minority recruitment is very low, which means that in some of these sectors, which have in many cases very high paying jobs, we are wildly underrepresented. So if we're underrepresented in some of the highest paying jobs, those are the kinds of jobs that enable wealth, that enable someone to bring that money to invest in their communities. So how can they do it? So there is something to be said for the discrimination that exists in hiring, but also in education. Those kinds of jobs, those avenues open up because those people had access to the education that pipelines them into those jobs. So how do we as a community move forward with the kinds of jobs that garner those kinds of salaries if our educational systems aren't being supported in that way? And we know that the government has not contributed those kinds of funds because we still see that level of discrimination that exists in schools. There have been some reports that have shown that schools are just as discriminated today as they were before Brown v. Board, right? They're just not overtly segregated. They are de facto segregated.
Interesting. I guess so. Just to get a and I'll have Michael start so everyone can think about their rating system. What would you say? I don't know if you guys can hear my son screaming that.
Okay.
What would you say is the top 3 factors that you believe that causes, I guess, the wealth disparity between Black people and white people, or why most Black people hasn't been able to obtain much wealth? What would you name as the top 3 factors? And does the Black family structure fit in there? Michael? And if you're watching live, feel free to also list what you think are the top 3 factors that affects Black wealth today.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, again, I'm going to beat the education drum and say, for starters, it's got to be education, because probably the biggest factor is that we were just excluded from so many social welfare programs. And I don't use welfare in the sense of like a welfare queen, Reagan era welfare. I mean, in the sense of the government creating economic impact zones for specific groups, returning military veterans, young families, et cetera, et cetera. Because we were excluded from that, I do think that that's a big challenge. Education is probably one of the most significant factors to bring us out of that. Secondly, I would say that obviously the Black family and the Black family structure as a whole, not just single parent versus dual parent, but how do we bring in grandparents and aunts and uncles and all of these people to help build a sense of community that existed. I think that in many cases when people talk about the Black Wall Streets, the Tulsas of long ago, one of the overriding factors is that everyone knew each other. They were very connected to their community. My mom liked to joke that her parents could whoop their kid, that they could get whoopings from their neighbors, this kind of thing, because they were that very much entrenched in their family, in their community. And also, lastly, I think it's just that financial piece, right? We need to understand that I tell my children, my money is not my money. I'm a guardian of my money for you to carry forward in the future for your children, right?
Oh, wow,
I'm just holding on to it for now. It's yours. I'm just a custodian of this for the time that I'm here, and I full well look toward passing it on to you. So that's all I'm going to say about my 3. Go ahead. I'll pass it on to whomever.
Awesome. Let's go to Tamika.
So education was definitely the first one that popped in my head. I agree with that completely. And I think that's both in the school system as well as in the household, because I feel like, if I didn't learn it from home, you kind of think that you would have at least been introduced to the topic in school. And financial awareness was just never a topic. Like, I honestly think that should have been something we were talking about in high school, because I'm becoming an adult. And what does that mean? It means a lot of drastic changes money-wise. And so I as an adult, as a full grown adult now, I've always wondered why that wasn't a topic more so in school, as someone transitioning from high school to college and from teenage to adult, and what that means, not just socially and emotionally, but also like financially. Like, where is that conversation in that transition of a big turning point in your life? I like the idea of us talking about community, about including the people that are around you, but I feel like it's also, there's a lot of talk about the Black dollar and how much our community actually has wealth that we just don't know what to do with, or we don't keep it within our community enough to really like make a statement, to hold some power. Like, if we truly utilized our Black dollar in a more communal way, I feel like there's a large impact that could happen there that we haven't bonded together on just yet. And then, you know, I was going back and forth with my third one, but I want to take into account health and wellness. You know, we're dealing with a lot. The Black community is dealing with a lot. We come with a lot of baggage, and we're bringing it from the outside world into our homes a lot of times. And that focus on those type of conversations are not there. You know, you're talking about the mom who's coming home from working 2 jobs and having to, you know, there's just other things that are your focus that needs to be your first and foremost focus. You have people who are suffering from chronic illnesses, and it's not a conversation. It's, oh, you're an addict, or you are a criminal. There's no empathy there. So, you know, how are these people making it and surviving and having to have these conversations? Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
No, that was good.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Burns.
Well, mine is not in no particular order. So definitely life insurance, finance. We have to learn. I don't care if you have $20. You have to learn how to pay yourself first. Put something. I don't care if you take $50 and put it on the side and sock that away every week for a year. I do this thing on my channel. It's called Lose the Weight, Save the Cash. So you lose 5 pounds for the month, but you save $500. $500 is a lot of money to some people. And all you have to do is save that little bit for that day. So today's the 20th. You're going to save $20. Today's the 1st. You're going to save $1. If you save $500 every month for 12 months, that's more money than some people have ever seen for us. For some of us, not all of us, but some of us. So definitely like a life insurance finance part. The second part is resources. A lot of resources are not readily available, or we don't know how to access them. Even though Uncle Google, as my friend says, Uncle Google is there, a lot of people don't have computers to get on to Google. Some people don't have cell phones or you know, the internet available for them to get on the internet to look at these things. Some of us, not all of us, right? And then the third thing, and like I said, in no particular order, is definitely knowledge, education, our surroundings. If we don't have that positivity of seeing, I'm looking at Tamika and all she wants to do is stay in the projects and then have her kids live here and her kids live here, that's what I'm going to see and want to emulate. But if I see mama working hard and be like, baby, we're going to get out of here. We're going to get us a house, but we have to save in order to get a down payment, in order to get a house. We can't go out there and buy you those Nikes that cost $400 or $500 and our rent is only $25. We have to put things in perspective, baby.
Come on now.
How to not have a Lexus while we live in the projects. How is our car more than our rent? You know, so we don't have. Listen,
just hurt somebody's feelings.
If I'm lying, I'm flying. If we don't have the knowledge to learn how to do this, and food, prosperity. When you get, like you said to me, when you get the food, you have to eat healthy. We have to stop eating this junk and the fast food. Don't get me wrong. I like me a good old French fry from McDonald's. Don't play. But I know I can't eat that every day.
Come on now.
And sometimes you need fruits and vegetables and food to keep the diabetes down, to keep the bad health habits that we have. Stop smoking. You know, but we're stressed, so we smoke. Like it's a never-ending cycle for some of us. But we can break that chain. I'm gonna shut up.
No, that's beautiful right there. That's beautiful. And so I would say this. You know, my second channel, Black Books Animated, is largely dedicated to reviewing Black authors. I would say relatively conscious Black people too at times. And so I am someone who recognized there's a difference between the symptoms of Black poverty and actually the disease and the cause. And so I do believe the disease of Black poverty across the diaspora is systemic racism in various forms. But I often feel that, you know, it is easy as the Black community to only point to systemic racism because at times we aren't required to do anything if we say systemic racism is the problem. And so we also need to deal, while we're dealing with systemic racism, the causes of our own poverty and the things that are within our control. Because I do believe there's a lot in our control to control our poverty, both as individuals and as a community at large. And so I agree with what most of you guys said in terms of what the major factors are, naming systemic racism as, the overlying arching factor. But, things that we can personally do every day to end our own poverty is, I do believe, healing the Black family structure. I do believe that is an important factor. And I'll say Black family structure, and I'll use Michael's term more of the Black community, really developing a stronger Black community. The second thing, and I think we're all saying this, is education. Education is so vital to our, advancements. And I mean, education from an economic standpoint, things that they don't necessarily teach in school. Because often when we talk about education, we always think about, learning in the classroom. But like Tamika said, some of the stuff that I found most beneficial in life, and actually the things that have garnered me the most amount of wealth, has been things that I learned outside of the classroom, dealing with investing in the stock market. And so, and I do believe those type of things will lead us to create wealth. The other thing, and Verns, and you were mentioning, I do think Black people live way, way beyond their means. And yes, we can blame systemic racism for that, but that is also completely within our control. We can affect that day in and day out. It does not matter how much money you make, you can save and invest. I have a video that talked about, if we're thinking about the long-term perspective, someone making $30,000 can leave $100 million inheritance to their children. Because if you understand, investing time and compound interest plays a bigger factor than anything else, really. And so, there's a lot as a community we can do. Yes, there's a major overlier, but we need to really focus on how we can change our own predicament. I just want to thank everyone.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh, did he freeze on you? Is he froze?
Yeah, I think we got lost.
I don't know if you guys can still see me or hear me. It does say my stream is having some connection issues.
There you go.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just got, I don't know, the baby may have pulled something out. I'm gonna blame him. But I thank everyone for joining us online. I thank you everyone for joining us, all of our panelists. And I'll give you guys some time to do some final closing thoughts, shout outs, or whatever you feel like, kind of saying as a closing statement. But thank you again. Thank you for all of the live comments. I had to take the comments off of the screen. Some people were saying some random stuff that I was like, I don't think is relevant to the topic at hand. But we'll start with you, Tamika. Any final closing thoughts?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me and for having this conversation. It helps to talk about it, to hear about it. It needs to be an ongoing conversation, so that we're always aware of what the needs are. And I feel like the more we're talking about it, it's going to help with picking up momentum, right? We can't just stop having these conversations. Personally, I was like, who am I going to shout out? And then I thought about it. When this pandemic started, I found a lot of hope in two super awesome Black women. One woman, she goes by the Budgetnista. I think she's
amazing. Oh my God, Tiffany, I've been following Tiffany for years. Yes. We got to get together,
Tamika. Definitely go and follow her and look her up. And then she put me on to Tila Holcomb, who is the founder and creator of Trade Your 9 to 5, which is a trend like stock program, which is what I'm currently doing right now. Also, another amazing Black woman who has a lot of financial knowledge to share and wealth of knowledge to give. So those are my two shout outs for tonight.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Michael?
So I don't want to shout out anyone in particular. I'm not a YouTuber in that way, but maybe in the future. But what I will say is, first and foremost, thank you, Kaden, for inviting us. It's been really interesting to see varying perspectives, as well as some of the comments that people have left in the chat. I really appreciate that. I think a big part of it, like Tamika said, is really about having these very important discussions. The more we discuss, the more we realize that we aren't alone in all of this, right? I think there's this feeling of isolation that can happen, especially in the Black community, because we feel like, some of us feel like, oh yeah, well, we all have to try to pull our own selves up by our own bootstraps. But no, there are like-minded people out there. We are having these discussions. And I think the more we have them in every corner, in every area in the world that we inhabit, the freer everyone else feels to be themselves, to bring their whole self into the discussion, and the more advancement we as a community make. So I'll just say thank you, and thank you all for that. And I'll pass it over to you, Vern.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that. And I would like to get you the panel's information too, so we can exchange information. So first, I'm going to shout out my booskies that are all in the chat. What's up, my booskies? Thank you all for being here. You guys are amazing. I'm telling you, my little squad, my little compound is everything. I love them. They are so super supportive because we talk about positivity, uplifting, motivating over there. We give out financial advice, and we pray for people that are, sometimes people just need to hear you say, we see you. Because some of us are not seen. I don't want to cry. Some of us are not seen. And sometimes we need that, and we have to uplift each other instead of trying to pull each other down. Oh, just because Kadeen got money and a YouTube channel, he think he all that. No, why would we bring him down? We need to lift him up. And sometimes we have that crab in a bucket mentality amongst each other. And we have to stop that, because there's enough money out here for them to have it. It's sure enough is enough money for us to have it that they done took from us to begin with. But I'm not going to get on that. Y'all know what I mean.
Come on now, talk about it, sister.
Right? But if you need more money, Jerome Powell will print us some more.
But I want to shout out Oliver Brown, who invited me yesterday to be on a panel on a Zoom, and I'm super excited. I had that yesterday. I had this today. And this is exactly what I was praying to God for, to open me up to people that are business and finance minded like me. And I am so appreciative. I was on a Zoom panel yesterday at this South Florida Black Chamber of Commerce. Okay.
Oh, Oliver Brown. Yes! You know that's my cousin, right? Did you? Oh.
Listen.
I heard the name, but when he said that, look at God.
The connections that I made yesterday, I'm telling you, I'll give you the information. You guys, we need to have a network link. And one of the guys on my channel calls me to plug. He said, because you're always plugging in somebody and giving them information and giving them knowledge. That's what we need. And so connecting to him and connecting to you and your panel, man, we could do this. Like, we can open up a whole new thing, like, seriously. So I thank you for allowing me to be here. And I'm so glad I met you guys. I definitely want to get you guys information. Okay.
Yeah. And you guys can hang back after we end the live stream. And I just want to shout out, first I'll shout out all the Black single mothers out there doing their thing. Like I said, now that I am a parent myself, I always tell my mom, I don't even know how you did it. Like, I really, really don't know. Parenting is not an easy task. Even when you're in a two-parent household. So imagine as a single mother working all the time, don't know how you did it, Mom. And I love you, And I also shout out all those single Black fathers out there and all the Black dads that are doing their thing. One of the things that I say, and I can't speak for everyone's situation, but what I see on my Facebook page from my generation of Black men is that they have, whether they're in the household or not, and many of them are, regardless to what, they have stepped up and they take good care of their children. And that always gives me a lot of joy. So shout out to the Black dads out there, and shout out to the Black family in general, because y'all are doing your thing, but yeah, so it's just a blessing all around. And I know we can do it. I personally feel like, we are on the right track to ending Black poverty, regardless to what the statistics say, And so thank you for everyone that joined us. Thank you for everyone that is always, support the channel. I like to call them family, because that's how I feel about you guys. You guys are my family. Even when y'all acting up, I have a crazy family sometimes that act up a little, but I still love y'all all the same. And so just God bless y'all, and remember to live your best life. And again, Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to my wife, who's probably watching my son and who I see in the comment section. God bless y'all and have a good day.